Okay, so there's three things I'm going to talk about in this video. The first one being the anatomical directional terminology. Now, what this is, it's just kind of terms that we use to describe geographical locations, like we use north, west, south, and east to determine direction. So certain ones could be lateral, medial, inferior, medial. So an example would be anterior, which means in front or the front part. Anterolateral, which means in front and to the outside. Now, to even further understand where certain body parts are, we have reference lines. So there's a total of 8, and since I have only limited time to talk about 3 things, I'm only going to go over 3 here. So one of them would be the mid-axillary line, which is a vertical line that goes through the apex of the armpit. And now there's the mid-sternal line, which is pretty self-explanatory from its name, but it's a vertical line that goes down right through the middle of your sternum. And then the third one that I'm going to go over is a scapular line, which is a line that goes vertically down the posterior surface through the inferior angle of the scapula. And now the second thing I want to talk about is just the different body regions. Now, with that being said, there's 2 main body regions, the axial and appendicular. Now, within that, you can break it down to even more subdivision regions, which would be the cephalic, cervical, trunk, upper limbs, and lower limbs. And now, if you want to get more specific, you could break it down into individual things. So like the nasal, which is your nose, otic, which is your ear, oral is your mouth, carpal, which is your wrist, femoral, which is your thigh, tarsal, which is your instep, and talus, which is your ankle, and so forth. There's so many more. And now the third thing, there's 3 different planes. The first one being sagittal, which divides the body into right and left halves. So the axis of rotation for that is frontal, which means it runs medial and laterally. Certain movements would be flexion and extension. Now, the second one is frontal, which divides the body into interior and posterior halves. So what the axis of rotation for that is sagittal, which runs, again, anterior and posterior. Certain movements would be adduction and abduction. Now for the third and final thing, it's transverse, which is divides body into superior and inferior. Now the axis for rotation for this one is vertical, which means it runs superior and inferiorly. Certain movements would be internal rotation and external rotation.